And welcome to another episode of Ask Alan Anything. This is episode 5, and we have a subject matter we're going to talk about. But at any time, if you're watching on Zoom, you are more than welcome to go to the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen and type in your question. I'll be glad to answer it. And also as a reminder, at any time during the course of the week, if you think of a question you would like for me to answer, either on the episode or directly to you, feel free to email me at bourgeoismedia@outlook.com. I'll have it on the screen for later on, but that is bourgeoismedia@outlook.com, and we'll be glad to answer your questions about publishing or marketing. So I'm going to start off right off the bat with a new report that just came out. We just got it today. It was released yesterday. It is from BookNet, which is a Canadian company. The research from BookNet Canada indicates that consumers who borrow books from libraries also purchase more books per month than those who don't use libraries. This is something that's been touted for a long period of time, either coming directly from the librarians and library sources or other sources as well. So this just reiterates, at least for Canada, and again, it does to a certain degree apply here in the United States or probably in a lot of countries. If you go to a library and you're looking at books, you'll have a tendency to purchase the books more likely than those who don't go to libraries. The study indicates that library users are also likelier to read print daily. And they also, which we'll talk about as well, we'll talk about audiobooks as well. In the results of a study released today, May 28th, to the news media, BookNet Canada is reporting an apparent correlation between library patronage and book buying. The research titled Borrow, Buy, Read, Library Use and Book Buying in Canada found that those who had both borrowed a book from a library and purchased one in the past year purchased an average of 3 books per month, whereas those who had purchased a book but said they never visit a library bought the least amount of books with 2.6 purchases. Data for the study was collected through 2018 using online surveys asked of adult English-speaking Canadians. And it is, of course, a frequent desire of those in the library world to prove their efficiency to the trade as consumer builders so as not to appear to be cannibalizing book sales, which is also another thing. A lot of people have looked at libraries in the respect, and this is my personal math from the study, that if they give the books to the libraries, that people won't tend to buy books. And this survey is saying that that's not the case. The study developed a profile of the typical Canadian book borrower with these attributes. And while this is Canadian, I want to point out this also from the studies that we have done about our author memberships and other programs to be pretty accurate for the US consumer as well. 58% identify female, in their mid-50s on average, partnered, about 59%, living in Central Canada, 58%, while that doesn't necessarily apply to the US. Not living with kids, about 51%, means their kids have moved out, considering the age that we're talking about. A university graduate is about 51%, and living in an urban area is about 47%. Those are pretty much in line with the US market as well, for the most part. At the peak, buyers who visited the library 10 to 14 times in the previous month said they purchased on average 6.1 books in a given month. So while they're visiting libraries, they're also buying books. And the reason for it is twofold. From what the survey was indicating, that they use libraries as a way to find books of interest. So that way they can either go home or go to the bookstore or various ways of purchasing the books. But they use the library as the main focus. And then they also use the librarians in some ways as a reviewer. What does the experience say about this particular event, this book? Did they read it? Did they like it? What kind of ranking did they give it? Things of that nature. In terms of discovering the books, the survey said that the study's reports say the public library is the fourth most popular way readers generally discover books. For borrowers, public libraries are even more popular, coming in second with 46%. The most popular way borrowers discover books is through word of mouth, 48%. Other popular methods for borrowers are browsing through physical stores, 34%, browsing retail sites, 32%, social media, 27%, and bestseller lists, 24%. So keep that in mind. One of the most popular ways is through the libraries, followed by physical bookstores, followed by retailer sites, then social media, and then bestsellers list. So keep that in mind as you are preparing your book sales and your marketing plan and stuff like that. Again, while this is a Canadian report, it does reflect a lot of other reports that have come out in the United States. Another item to consider, the public library market reported more than 8.5 million loans to the library data from June to December 2018. 48% were juvenile and YA, 27% were adult fiction, 25% adult nonfiction. Okay, again, this is very important information that you should consider, okay? 8.5 million loans just from June to December in 2018. If you add in the extra months, you're looking at well over 10 million libraries loans, okay? It means books were checked out and stuff. And this also doesn't include the audiobook market, excuse me, and just books in general, which does include the audiobook, the ebooks, and things of that nature. So while they are looking and reading and listening to other things, they are determining whether or not that's a book of interest, or if by chance that author has other books, if they like that particular book, they will be more inclined to go to the bookstores, various outlets, to find other books by that author. So keep that in mind as you are planning out your marketing. There are a lot of different ways to get that out there through ebook donations, physical book donations, things of that nature. Don't expect a library to buy your book. Most of the time, they are looking at ways to get the books as inexpensively as possible. The big 5 publishing houses and a lot of smaller ones that are not quite as big, but up in that top 50%, give books away. They give them away simply so that people will read them and recommend them. That's the greatest word of mouth that any book can get. And if it's from a librarian, that carries a lot of weight. So while they are gold in some respects, they're not the ultimate end to getting your book out there, but they are a major part that you do have to consider when you are working with your books. Now, we, meaning the organizations I work with, have always encouraged people to participate in the 3 top book festivals that relate to librarians. In the wintertime or early in the part of the year, you have the American Library Association Midwinter event. Then in April is the Texas Library Conference, which is the 3rd largest event in the United States. The Midwinter is the 2nd. And then the 1st largest event is the American Library Association General Conference, which is usually held in June somewhere. Those are the top 3. Now, each state or regions do also have their own library conferences. California, New York, Washington, all of those, large enough states do have their own. And then the smaller states combine in local regions or certain groups that they work with and stuff like that. Those are great ways to get librarians to learn about you. Keep in mind, however, they're not cheap, okay? For example, if you were to do the ALA conference, which is at least 5 days long, you're looking at a 10 by 10 booth to be approximately $2,500 just for the booth. You've got your shipping of getting the books there, you getting there, if you're going to have help there, your hotel, your airfare, all those expenses. We looked at doing it in 2019, and it was going to cost us a minimum of $5,000 to go to that location, which happened to be Washington, D.C., which is not inexpensive anyways. Why they put it there made no sense. They need to look at cost-effective ways for the companies to be able to afford going more and stuff. The ALA is usually held in some cold place, which is usually cheaper because people don't want to necessarily go to Seattle or Denver during the middle of winter. They'd rather head south, so that makes sense. It is more cost effective. But even for the ALA, which is a 3-day event, you're still looking at $2,000 booth rental plus your expenses and stuff. You can pretty much count on about $4,000 in expenses. Now, the Texas Library Conference is also expensive. Their 3-day event is running about $2,000 for a booth rental as well. Depending on where they have it, and they move it around the state of Texas on a regular basis, you have that hotel expense and travel expense for people to come to and stuff like that. So again, you have an expense that is worth it in the long run. I say it is. But if you don't have the money, there are alternatives, okay? The Library Journal, which is one of the oldest library journals in the United States, well over 60 years old, which also does reviews for books and stuff, has a free outlet where indie authors and self-published authors can get their books into the Library Journal system. Here's the catch. You can load it into the system for free, and will go into your regional state database. If it's a new book, and if they're interested and they do a review, then it goes on to a national database, which is great. It expands your outreach, and you don't have to do anything. But as part of their system, they then do charge for people to read the ebook version and stuff like that, but you don't make any money on it. You lose all availability or possibilities of royalties and things like that. That's part of the agreement. Again, is that worth getting potential exposure? I would say yes. It's a small amount that you're going to lose out on. It's not going to be your life, your bread and butter, so it's worth it. And it's free to use, so yeah, I would take full advantage of it. We've pushed it over the years for authors to do it, but you need to be aware, again, you do lose the royalty rights. And depending on the program they're working with, they may have, with the Library Journal, for example, I know they were working on getting it onto transit systems, so people with Wi-Fi could download books while they're reading and stuff through their system. That's great. Again, it's another way of getting the exposure. That brings up the issue then, if you have multiple books, don't give all your books away. You don't want to do that. Give your oldest book. If it's a series, that's even better. That way, as long as you've tagged the other books in your ebook that you're putting into the system, then people will learn about your other books and they'll want to read more about you, whether they do check them out at the library and or purchase them online, whether it's an ebook, audio, whatever. That's the way to market the book. So again, if you have multiple books, put your oldest one up there, or if you really feel that's not your best book and you have a mid-range book, in other words, like you have 10 books and book number 4 or 5 or 7 is your better book, put that one up. That will hook them into reading the other books. Again, the more books you've written, the greater chance of success because you have more out there to give people, and therefore if they're attracted to your style of writing and love your storytelling, they will read your books. They hopefully will buy more of your books. So be careful on how you put it out there. Again, if you have multiple books, don't put them all out, just put one of them out there. Get them hooked into wanting to read more of your books. It's a great marketing tool. Again, that's the Library Journal Self-Published program. You can look it up online or email me, and I'll be more than glad to put it up on the internet. If you get my book, it's in there, so you can access the information from there. There are other smaller libraries, for example, in Orlando, Florida. Their library system in Orange County, you can put your ebook in there as well. It is free again, and again, you don't make any money off of the loans that they do, so you get no royalties. Again, you have to decide for yourself if that's worth it financially. Well, again, one book, if you have multiple books, help sell the other books? I would say yes, so that you're not totally missing out. Look at other programs as well. Do the book contests that we've talked about, do short story contests that we've talked about. Are they getting the books into the libraries? Again, that could be a great marketing tool for you, for people to discover you and then learn about your other books. Look at those. We do that with our short story contest, both in our state of Texas, but we are also expanding outside. So anybody from around the country can submit and enter into our contest. And again, we'll be putting those books out into libraries so that people can learn about the winning authors and about their books and stuff. So look at the alternatives. Again, I want to stress that, you know, this report is backing up what a lot of things have been saying over the years, that you do have people using the library as a resource to discover new authors, to find new stories, and then hopefully purchase their books. And according to this study, a good amount of people are doing that. And I'll read that for you. The research that was entitled, which you can easily find, Borrow, Buy, Read, Library Use and Book Buying in Canada. And again, this does also relate to the stats that have been put out there for the United States. Found that those who had both borrowed a book from a library and purchased one in the last year purchased an average of 3 books per month. Whereas those who had purchased a book but said they never visited a library bought at least an amount of books at 2.6 purchases. That is important, okay? If you're going after a certain market, get it into there, find out who that librarian is for that particular genre or that particular age group or whatever, and try to get the books to them. Give the books for free. It's worth the investment. And again, if you go through the Library Journal or other programs, those are good alternatives for you as well. So again, if you have a question, feel free, if you're watching Zoom, to go to the bottom, click on Q&A, ask the question there, or at any time you happen to be seeing the show on any of the formats that we put it out there, and you do have a question that I may have referred to in one of the shows or didn't quite explain properly, feel free to email me at bourgeoismedia@outlook.com. The video will show that email address on a regular basis, so please feel free to do so. Now, the other items of interest, we are getting more excitement for the WeFiction contest. So for those of you who want to expand their writing capabilities or kind of see how well they do with a team expert, feel free to go to our website at wefiction.indy, wefiction.dearindy.org. I'll put it up on the screen so you'll be able to go there. Feel free to do it. And if you're a reader and you have a story idea, we are doing this as a fundraiser for Dear Indy, which gets books into Title I schools and libraries. Feel free to donate and put your information up there. So this way the authors can use it and work with it, and that's part of the contest and stuff, and you'll get benefits for doing that. Not only, of course, helping us get books into schools, but also you'll get a copy of the books that use your information and stuff. So that's for characters, locations, plot, and plot twist, okay? The other big event that we're getting a lot of traction on is our National Authors Day, which in 2019 is on November 2nd. It will be held in Houston. People are trying to sign up for that, and as an author, if you have books published, we will promote you up on the website. Again, this is all about celebrating the fact that you're a published author, and also about reminding the world of all the books that are out there, not just from the top 5, which loves to print a lot of Trump books this year and the last year and probably in years to come, but also good stories that are written by indie authors, self-published authors, etc. So definitely check those out. That is authors.dearindy.org or wefiction.dearindy.org. We have just a few more minutes left. So hoping for some more questions. Pretty much that's going to be it for this episode. I was kind of thrown off balance this evening because we had a fire alarm in my complex. Wasn't quite sure I reached this in time, but I did. Another item for you to consider as you're working on your marketing plan, make sure you know who your audience is. I've mentioned this before, but do the research. Find out who your audience is. When you're looking at the books in a bookstore or online for your genre, look at the covers, look at the sales pitches, look at how things are laid out inside the book. All of that is very critical because you don't want to put out a book of sci-fi with fantasy style lettering or something of that nature, or wording that lends it to believe it's a fantasy versus sci-fi, those type of things. You want to look at the research for your genre when you're writing a book. Make sure that you're in line with everybody else, because if those are true diehard people about sci-fi, they expect things to look a certain way. And if it doesn't, they'll throw them for a loop. Chances are they will ignore it. The only way they really will pay attention to it is through word of mouth. So again, look at that and study all of that. Be aware of it. It helps you in the long run promote and sell your books. Okay. And again, I know a lot of authors, when they get done going through the book and getting all the proofreading and the beta testers and all that stuff, they want to immediately go to publish. Don't. That kills you. That hurts you. Plan out your marketing and your book release. Set up a book release party. Set up your pre-orders. Set up all of that in advance so that you know at 6 months out your book will be released. But in that 6-month period from the time the book is pretty much done, you've started promoting it. You start talking about it. You start getting the reviews that are so critical, and not Amazon reviews. We're not talking about those. We're talking about bloggers that read those particular genres. We're talking about newspapers. We're talking about Kirkus. We're talking about Library Journal, if you do that route. Publishers Weekly, and so many others. My book has a lot of those listed in there, so feel free to get a hold of a copy of my book. It has so much information in there that will help you succeed, including planning out your pre-orders and getting ready for that release and stuff. Don't rush yourself to get the book released and then market. That hurts you in the long run. Spend time with your first book, especially to plan it out, market it, spend the time to build it. While you're doing all this, you can be starting to work on your second, third, fourth book, whatever, but plan it out. And don't release quickly back to back. I don't know what it is with some people. They think as soon as they've got the book written, they get it out there, then they start on the other one. They rush that one so that within 3 months or 6 months it's out there. Spread it out. Allow for a year's time. If you're properly marketing and promoting the books, a year will go by really fast anyways, and your people that are interested in you will be wanting to know what's going on with the next book. So use that as your marketing tool. Feed them that information. As I mentioned before in previous shows, allow your characters to do your tweets and your posting on Facebook and whatever. Let the readers get caught up in the book before it comes out. Let them want to get a pre-order. Let them want to get that special first edition copy. Let them be ready to get the book when it's about time, so that when it is released, you have all those sales backed up to it, and hopefully they've already started talking about the book to other people, so that when it is released, they're buying the book, and that helps build your sales numbers. And if you're with the right organization that's reporting those sales numbers, that may help get you into a top 10 list. And as we indicated earlier in the study, 27, almost 30% of people are listening or reviewing that. That can be important. You don't know who is looking at that, and you don't want to miss out on that market. So consider that. Getting it to the libraries before it's officially released. That way the librarian can say, hey, a hot new book has just come out, and here's information about it. We've got a brand new copy, an art copy. So take a look at it, read it, enjoy it. They're talking about your book. Again, we saw about 37% are listening to that. So that is really critical. Plan all of this out. Don't rush your book to publish and release. Plan it out. I keep saying that time and time again, and I keep pounding it to all my members and stuff. This is critical. This will help you succeed. Okay? Don't listen to those companies that say, we can get you on the top 100 lists of USA Today or New York Times and stuff like that. Yeah, they may be able to do it, but chances are they're not going to be able to. They'll say, well, we don't have a guarantee, but we'll take your money anyways. feel free to give it to us. We have no problem taking it, and we'll charge you lots of money for that possibility. And that's really what it boils down to. It's a possibility. There are different ways of doing it to help build your long-term goal of success. Short-term goals of success don't always work out, especially if you're doing it through the hype of other people saying, yeah, we can do it. We know what we're doing. We've seen so-and-so do it, and we've seen so-and-so do it. And what they're not telling you is, yeah, they may have helped those people, but they may have 1,000 other people they couldn't help because for whatever reason. And of course, they're not going to talk about, they're only going to talk about the ones that have succeeded. Trust me, I've been there. I've seen some people not succeed because they don't properly work it. I know with our organizations, when people are working the programs and using the materials that are available to them, we've seen that various rates where from 0 to 10%, barely see any changes. From 10 to 50%, they see almost a 50% increase. If they do 75% of our programs, they've seen 150% increase in their sales. So working it, spending the time, listening to what we have to say, not only myself, but other people who have been in the business long enough will help guide you, okay? There are people who will rush books out to print simply because they're short little books and they want to make a buck off of you thinking that, hey, you need to read this in order to succeed and stuff like that. That's not the case. Yeah, they give you little tidbits, but that's all it is. It's little tidbits. They don't give you the full meat. Even with my workbook that's currently out there, Author's Revolution, there's not a full amount of meat because it's a companion to the book that is finishing up, that has all the meat, that goes into more details and helps you succeed. The workbook is just that, a workbook that has all that information to help you through the process of my courses, and the companion book is really where the meat is. So I'm taking my time getting it out there and letting it build so that it properly helps the authors. So that's the end of today's episode. I thank you very much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me at bourgeoismedia@outlook.com. Thank you and have a great day.
Authors, do you know the true cost of being published? In the Author's Revolution workbook, BL & Bourgeois gives you hands-on tools to use and to understand the true cost of being published. He will also give you information about low-cost or free programs that are designed to help you market your book. BL & Bourgeois has been helping hundreds of authors since 2011, educating them on how to better market and sell their books. Buy the Author's Revolution workbook exclusively at indielector.store